Good morning, children, little children and big children. We're all children of God. So, how's everybody feeling this morning? Don't everybody get excited all at once. Does everybody love Jesus? All right, that's a good start then. In the Bible, now do any of you have pets at home? Like dogs or cats or canaries or zebras or giraffes or, you know what I mean. Any cats? Dogs? Gerbils? Mice? Parakeets? Well, what kind of pet? Fish? Well, what kind of pets do you have? Gosh, my story is going to be about animals. You don't have any pets that I named off? God, I named off a lot of popular ones. We got zebras or elephants or something, or what? Oh, well, I'm going to quit asking questions then. If you got pets, that's good, because what do pets need from people? What do pets need from human beings? Love and caring and, caretaking, right? Well, we look all through the Bible, and there's lots of stories about people. And in the middle of those stories about the different people, sometimes there are animals involved as well. But we look at all the people part of it, and we don't pay quite as much attention to the animal part of it. But God works through people, and he works through animals, right? So there's a lot of important animals in the Bible stories. Can you think of one? Anybody here? Can you think of one animal that's in a Bible story? There's lots of. What can you think of? Good choice. Donkey. That's a story about Balaam, and he was riding on his donkey, and that donkey saw something that Balaam didn't even see, didn't it? It saw an angel with a big sword in its hand, and it was going to stop and go the other way and everything. So that's an excellent example. Somebody's getting pretty busy here. Anybody else think of another one? Another animal that was in a Bible story that was kind of important? What about the story about Jonah? Was there something in that story? Yeah, a big fish. What do you suppose would have happened in the story of Jonah if he'd have got thrown over that ship, and God hadn't put that big fish there to swallow him up and keep him safe? What do you think would have happened? He probably would have drowned, and the story would have been altogether different. But God didn't want him to drown. He wanted him to finish his assigned task, which was to go to Nineveh. So what does he do? He puts a big fish down there, and while when Jonah's sinking down into the water, whoop, this fish gulps him up and gave him about 3 days to think about his bad choice while he was sitting in the belly of that fish. So God used that fish for a very precise purpose. Can you think of any other animals? What about lion? Did you say lion? Is this like in the book of Daniel when he was thrown in the lion's den? Another excellent. Do you think if God didn't control those lions, the Bible says they were really hungry, even when Daniel went down into the lion's pit, they were really, really hungry when he went in. What do you suppose kept him from getting eaten up? The Bible says God shut the mouths of those lions. Can you imagine God's able to do everything. And Daniel was very faithful. So the lions were really hungry, but they didn't eat him overnight. And then when they pulled him out of there, what happened? They threw all the bad guys in there, and then God opened the mouths of the lions, and they just chomped and just had a field day with them. So God works through animals to make a difference in the lives of the people that are characters in these different stories, part of God's will through the whole Old and New Testament. How about one other one? Can you think of, let's see, a donkey and a whale and What about a bird? Can you remember any story where a bird was part of it? What about Elijah? Didn't Elijah get fed by ravens or crows? God made sure that he had food because he was out in the wilderness. He was on his own. And God used birds to feed him so he wouldn't perish. So if God uses animals, he's used them in Old Testament times and probably in New Testament times as well. Don't you suppose he could use them if you or I or somebody in this church was in a desperate situation? Do you think he might use an animal to help somebody to survive? I mean, he's done it all through the Bible. And I think the God that did it back 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, or even 2,000 years ago, would still do it today. But there's one thing that we have to be faithful. We have to be faithful, and we have to trust in God because he wants us to trust in him for all things. And then he does his part to preserve us and to keep us, enable us to do his will. So keep that in mind. And I'm a fisherman, and there was even a fish. You remember the story when the fisherman caught the fish and pulled the gold coin out of its mouth? So God even uses fish to in the pursuit of having his will done throughout humanity. So keep that in mind. God doesn't just use people; he uses animals. And then if you get a pet or something, be sure and be really nice to it. Treat it well and take good care of it and feed it and everything. So, okay, that's it. Go back to your seats.